All right. Well, good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Talk About It Live with Frank and Manny. We want to welcome to our program this morning. We got a lot to talk about. So, how you doing this morning, Frank?
Hey, brother. Good to see you again.
It
I
is-
can't get away from you, man.
I know we had a pretty good weekend. We just got back from Freedom Fest there in good old Concan, Texas, and so I got to meet with a whole bunch of Border Patrol agents as well over there, and retired. Got to tell some good old war stories.
Yeah, stuff
as
that
well.
would never be told anywhere else. Plus, we met with a lot of active duty Border Patrol agents, supporters. There was it was a benefit kind of contest, cooking contest, cornhole tournament for the Uvalde Station Welfare Morale Recreation Association down there. Great times, good times, just meeting with our brothers and sisters in green, but also making new friends and hooking up with some old ones from around the Texas Hill Country and points beyond. It was a good time, man. And of course, we got to park our RVs right next to each other at an RV park over there. That's a little bit of the retirement dream there, just chilling out and having a good time with family and friends.
Oh yeah, man! It was awesome. There's a lot of things going on. There were some bands playing as well. They had, of course, a barbecue cook-off. You can't come to Texas right without having some good old
Yeah.
Texas barbecue and some brisket and whatnot. It was an awesome time. And we want to thank Gil Maza from driving all the
Yes.
way down from San Diego, California, setting up his Old Patrol headquarters booth. Sharing and selling quite a bit of his stuff there to the agents. So
And-
that's pretty cool.
Gil was a big hit, folks. If you don't know about Gil Maza, he's a patrol agent out of San Diego sector, retired Border Patrol agent. He's also a chaplain. That's how we met. And so he has the Old Patrol HQ site. And so whenever you're out there scrolling around Facebook world and you're in the need of Border Patrol items, Gil has some of that stuff for sale. And it's just good stuff. He was a big hit. A lot of people stopped by his canopy tent there, and it was good to see Gil again and his wife.
Yeah, it was awesome. Of course, we all got to hang out at the RV park there and grill some more, talk about some more stuff, and of course tell some old patrol stories. And so my kids were there, so the look on their faces telling those old patrol stories was kind of
Yeah.
kind of funny,
A little bit revealing.
yeah, a
for
little
him.
bit revealing. Not that we did anything wrong.
No,
but,
no, bro. It's just yeah, it's good. One of my twin sons was also there, and it was just a good time. So they can see, a sense of who we are.
Yeah.
What made us the persons, the men, the patriots, the concerned, involved citizens that we are today. So it was a good time all around.
And it's awesome to see that camaraderie is still there, right?
Yes.
We still bleed green, and the patrol is still small, even in the retired life, right? I mean, because
Yes.
we were bumping into retired agents over there, and there's still that brotherhood, man, that we enjoy.
And talking about that brotherhood, that's a perfect segue to our special guest this morning.
Yeah, this morning we got retired chief of the patrol, Rodney Scott. How you doing this morning, sir?
I'm doing great. It sounds like you guys had a good weekend.
It was good, Chief. It was good.
And we want to thank you so much for waking up a couple hours early. We know you're over there on the West Coast, and so, man, we want to thank you so much and for being on our program this morning.
No, I appreciate the opportunity, and your intro was perfect. The Border Patrol is a family. Just because you're retired doesn't mean you're not part of it anymore. You don't still care about it, and I do still care deeply. So glad to be here.
And so, how long you been retired already, sir?
Officially, it was August 14th of this last year.
Wow. And I've been retired for a year. I did 25 in the Border Patrol, all here in Del Rio, Texas. Started retired last year, February. Frank, you did 30 years.
30 years, December 2018 was when I got out.
Man, so if we calculate that, there's over almost 100 years experience here. Just a little bit shy, right?
Yeah, a little bit. And there was a million years of experience at the park this weekend. But Chief, we're glad you're with us. These are turbulent times, interesting times, to say the least. In the Border Patrol, in our nation, and actually as we look at what's happening overseas around the world, very interesting times. And the Border Patrol, when I came in '88, it was still a relatively small agency under the Department of Justice, INS, Immigration and Naturalization Service, and so it did play primarily a role, in our nation's borders. But there were some instances where they branched out. I remember they were involved with that hijacked airplane and some other things out there. I believe it was in El Paso. So the patrol has a history of rising to the call of the nation whenever America needs us. And so as you know, as we're looking at the patrol today, certainly we'll be talking, all things Border Patrol. But why don't you start off, Chief, with just giving us a little bit of your background? A lot of people would see you in uniform, but they wouldn't know, who you are, where you come from. So can you give us a little bit of insight into that?
Yeah, sure. So I guess I can start out at the very beginning. Uh, a lot of guys in the Border Patrol, I started my career in San Diego and Imperial Beach. And, we're taught to kind of look at the package, look at how people dress, look at, their hairstyle or whatever, and figure out what they're from. So everybody thought I was from California, and I was not. I grew up an Indiana farm kid. When I was 16, my dad was also an engineer, and the company he was working for, everything was kind of shutting down in the Rust Belt in the Midwest. So we found ourselves moving to Nogales, Arizona. My dad worked for a maquiladora 21 years. He crossed into Mexico every day to go to work. Wow. So that's really Nogales, Arizona is where I got introduced to the Border Patrol. That was the 80s, Nogales specifically. I really didn't even know anything about immigration. The big threat then in that area was narcotics smuggling. That's all you ever really heard about Border Patrol. I liked the outdoors. I ended up getting a dirt bike. I loved it, fell in love with the desert ultimately. But I also liked flying. So I went to school to be a pilot. My career goal was to be a pilot for the Border Patrol. But if you guys remember, back then you had to be in 3 years, do your time on the ground before you could fly. So you knew how to work the traffic. So I get hired by Border Patrol, thinking I'm going to be in some small town in the middle of nowhere, southwest border, and I end up in Imperial Beach. And then that's when I found out there was an immigration problem, because that place was insane back then, if you remember. Thousands and thousands of people crossing every night. So I did my 3 years on the ground, was about ready to put in for pilot's jobs, and I still remember being anybody familiar with San Diego, I was in a Campos Ditch north of Smuggler's Canyon with a group of about 50 on the ground. One partner helped me out, working together. And I looked up at the helicopter shining a flashlight on me, and I was like, I'm not really ready to be the guy holding the flashlight yet. And then fast forward, some time in San Diego, spent some time in Arizona. Really thought I was going to just retire happily as a first-line supervisor in Arizona. And 9/11 hits, changed a lot of things. CBP, you guys talked about how the mission has changed and we've stepped up to the times. That really opened my eyes. And then kind of how I ended up, in some of the leadership positions. I spoke out about some challenges we were having back then, with some policies, a pursuit policy specifically, some checkpoint issues. Next thing I knew, I found myself up in DC being asked to help fix some of those issues. And part of that, I got assigned to work anti-terrorism issues. I got exposed to a lot of threats to this country that I never thought about, being a Border Patrol agent in Imperial Beach and in Nogales. And that made it, not that it wasn't real before, but that made it even more real, because every day, you see what's in front of you. And what is that? Mostly back then, it was adult males from Mexico, Western Hemisphere, South America, Central America. But we would forget there was a lot of other threats mixed in with that, besides just the narcotics. So I kind of made it my mission the rest of my career to make sure we focused on the fact that border security really is national security. And our priorities the operational priorities have changed as time went on based on the threat of the day. But all the threats are there every single day. And I've tried to carry that message forward and really make sure that agents remember, especially at times like this, when you don't necessarily have the support we had before, that the mission still matters. The job really, really does matter, because, the rest of America is counting on the Border Patrol and CBP to know who and what is entering our home. It's kind of that simple. Anyway, now that's a quick version. It probably didn't sound quick. That's a kind of a quick version of how I ended up from Indiana farm kid to ultimately, Chief of Border Patrol.
Wow, that's amazing. It's an awesome journey, Chief. And that as opportunities open, God is good, and some doors close, some open. And so you were put into a leadership position, where a lot of folks look up to you. A lot of folks trust your judgment, trust your guidance. We need strong leaders, not just in the Border Patrol, but in life in general. As men, as fathers, we're certainly called to be those strong leaders. But as you're looking at the state of the Border Patrol right now, I mean, our guys, and we care deeply for them. Pre-show conversation here, Manny brought up the fact that we were involved with the development, implementation of the Border Patrol chaplaincy program, which is it was designed and put together to deal with the issues that Border Patrol agents and their families and other employees have to face. So right now, it's a difficult time. What are your thoughts about the current, environment in which our Border Patrol agents are working, both not just out, the outdoors environment, but I'm talking about the political realm, the state of society in America right now?
Yeah, it's challenging to say the absolute least. First, thank you for what you guys did. So, law enforcement, especially at the time when you were working to set up the chaplaincy program and talk about, mental health issues and spiritual grounding and all that wasn't overly popular. It was, hey, go do your job. Just I don't want to touch none of that touchy feely stuff. Go do your job.
Yeah.
But in the reality, you hit the nail on the head early on, and people don't think about it. But you joked about this last weekend, telling a bunch of war stories. You didn't do anything wrong, but if you weren't there, it's kind of hard to understand.
Right.
So until you've taken down a group of 50, with either by yourself or it's really hard to explain the emotions that go with that, right? To somebody that hasn't been through it, or even a canyon just by yourself at 2 a.m. here in brush break. It's just different. Or the fact that it's the 4th or 5th birthday that you missed one of your kids because you couldn't get a shift change, or Christmas, or so the chaplaincy program and all those the family that we created was critically important. And I think it's more important today than ever before. I think it's always been important, but when you have everybody from the outside a cheerleader, but it's easier to get up, focus, and go to work that day. But when you have the challenges we have today, I really do try to stay out of the politics, but I don't avoid just calling out facts where facts are appropriate. When you have an administration that doesn't support your mission and that does everything they can to kind of undercut your mission, and then you get the impression from the agents on the line, whether it's true or not, they get the impression that the leadership doesn't have their back. That puts on a lot of extra challenges, a lot of emotional baggage. Even people forget about this, that even at home, how do you explain to your wife and kid that it's super important that I missed that birthday or that special event again, when they see on the news that you're releasing everybody you caught into the U.S. Those dynamics, that's a mental challenge right now, and that's real.
Yeah, Chief, and as you're saying that, I remember there were some pivotal persons that were involved early on. Remember Brian Hondo Henderson out there was one of those key players. Jimmy Stout out of Arizona. Eric Auden was another as a supervisor who was involved with this, and Dan Harris Jr. was I remember when he was a senior. He was an 11 involved GS 11 involved with putting together the Honor Guard, and they brought together the Honor Guard peer support chaplaincy programs to help our agents, and it was difficult at times. I remember we needed to look at the program and make it relevant to the men and women and employees, their families, and so we had to tackle the big elephants in the room that folks in law enforcement typically don't like to talk about, which were, for instance, suicide by law enforcement officers, domestic violence by law enforcement officers, and substance abuse in the sense of self-medication, primarily through alcohol use. These were issues that made us very unpopular, but we knew that we had to address them because they did affect the person, and thus they affected the agency because these persons were our co-workers. And those were tough times. We always looked for our champions people that saw the need, saw the cause. What we were trying to do was a good thing to affect the organizational culture because it was impacting our employees and their families. And so I'm grateful for, over the horizon type of leadership, folks that could rise above the nuts and bolts and we'll have to reshare.
You may have to,
Yeah.
but let me see here.
I can hear you good. I just have your banner though. No photo, no video.
Okay. Well, it shows that we're on. So okay, we're on. Okay, well, we're back. So, hey, everybody, we're so sorry. Sorry about all that. I don't know what happened, but everything just went down for a second there, man. Well, not for a second, but for a couple of minutes. So now we got one viewer back on. So he stayed faithful,
Yeah.
But it was
Don't jump back on. So Chief, I'll go back to my last question, and it had to do primarily with the Ukraine-Russia thing. War displaces people, chaos, death, destruction, etc. People are moving from the eastern Ukraine into western Ukraine. Some of the cities out there, Lviv is one of them, etc. But there's already talk of eventually displaced persons from the Ukraine and even Russians making their way to the United States. And so my thoughts are, so they're bypassing the whole of Europe and they're coming to the U.S. eventually. And our agents are already overwhelmed with the traffic that's already here from so many other nations. Now we're going to add into the mix. Even though there have been reports of, some Russians trying to illegally enter the country, now you could potentially be talking about tens of thousands. What are your thoughts about that as we're, finding out more and more about what's happening in the Ukraine?
Yeah, I think it's a very important point. In talking about border security holistically, I think it's important to go back to the ground truth and remind people that even though Border Patrol started out under immigration, that's only one aspect of border security. And at its simplest form, what I try to use the analogy of a home, that border and Border Patrol specifically, border security is exactly like your home. You just expect people to come through your front door, announce themselves, and then you decide based on whatever criteria you've established who and what gets to enter your home. On a national level, it's the same thing, and we have those ports of entry. And that's where only place people are supposed to be coming and going out of our home. We've had challenges over the years, right, with surges in illegal immigration. We have not seen until the last few years the disproportionate number of people from around the world. Traditionally, it's been Mexico, Central America, South America. But I'll remind everybody that last year, the U.S. Border Patrol caught people from over 150 different countries sneaking across the border in between those ports of entry. But the immigration laws are really put in place to help. It's to protect America, but it's also to help protect the legal immigration system. But all that really relies on people coming through that front door. So this does worry me, but it worries me more because of the policy failures of the current administration. That every administration, regardless of your political affiliation, at least during my time, prior to this one, has tried to lock down and improve border security in between those ports of entry, so that when we're accepting refugees from other countries or from anybody who's coming into our home, we get to vet them properly. That's what's really worrying me now is all of this stuff getting layered on top of each other. That basically we've shut down a lot of the programs that were working that restrict illegal immigration. And the Border Patrol agents really are completely overwhelmed. We already know for a fact that that's created an opportunity for the cartel to use these groups of people, shape the border and bring across criminals, bring across narcotics. And then this is just potentially going to make it worse. We should be helping people around the world. That's what our refugee system is for. But the refugee process, you're supposed to get vetted before you come, and you come through a port of entry. That should be Citizenship and Immigration Services responsibility and not Border Patrol. But we're going to continue to have challenges and problems like this. And as long as this administration ignores the fact that you're supposed to come through a port of entry and treats people the same when between the ports of entry, we're not going to slow this down.
No, you're exactly right, Chief, and I appreciate all those. I think a lot of people don't understand how immigration works. And they think that there's people in leadership who don't understand it, but in fact, they do understand it. The current administration does, in fact, understand how Border Patrol and immigration is supposed to work, and how these different agencies within DHS are supposed to augment one another, support one another, and to vet who's coming into our country, legally or illegally. And right now, it just, over the weekend here in Del Rio sector, and we're considered a small sector over here, over the weekend, we already had over 3,400 illegal aliens come through. Over 90% of them were released into the community. And I think that's one of the big issues that agents are facing right now, is that, when we were in, we had a big, I came in, in the 90s, and during the big influx, when, like you were saying earlier, when I first came in, it was just people from, Mexicans coming from Mexico, OTMs here and there. And then we started catching people from special interest countries. It just started getting bigger. The drugs started coming in, more and more potent drugs, more dangerous drugs were coming in. Our mission changed, where terrorist organizations were using smuggling organizations and cartels to infiltrate our country. And I think people don't realize that all that stuff is still going on. There's the current administration continues to push the humanitarian effort, or of these illegal aliens that are coming through. But the reality is, many of these cartels and smuggling organizations are using these family units, using some of these OTMs to continue to infiltrate our country, to bring in drugs like fentanyl. We're getting the highest seizures of fentanyl ever in Border Patrol history, the gotaways. But I know you've said earlier, I've heard some of your interviews earlier, that you have mentioned that cartels and terrorist organizations have been using illegal immigration to infiltrate our country for years.
Yeah, it's interesting that one of the first things I learned when I was working on anti-terrorism issues in D.C. Back 2003 to 2008 was that in the Western Hemisphere, at least, there's no such thing as a terrorist smuggling organization.
Right.
Terrorists are like anybody else that have a lot of money. They go to the organization that provides the best service to sneak them into the United States, the best human trafficking organizations they can find. And those are the same ones that are smuggling in everybody else. So when people try to compartmentalize and they want to talk about just narcotics or just terrorism or just refugees, I remind them, you can't do that. At the border, it's all mixed together, and you don't know who you're talking to until you actually arrest them. And like last year, you touched on this a little bit, but just before I left as chief, we were estimating, and this is not a swag like the old days, we have science behind it, but about 400,000 gotaways. Jeez. That means documented incidents where we know people beat us. They snuck past us and got into the United States. We have no idea who they were or what they were carrying, but we do know that they very intentionally waited until agents were overwhelmed with asylum seekers, if you will, people that were willing to give up, and they paid extra to get around the Border Patrol. So people should be asking why, right? Those are the real threats.
And Chief, as you're saying that, it is such a complex issue. I suppose, we got to break it down at times. So, in morsels, nibbles, that's kind of something we say around here. How do you eat an elephant? A nibble at a time, But part of that, you spoke about the how these operations are integrated. I mean, and it's very troubling for us as former law enforcement, but, many aware citizens, to see how efficient the entire human drug smuggling operation has become. And sadly, part of it, I know you've heard it, is that we see legalized smuggling now, in a sense, and that's a hard thing to even say, but many folks, that it's been described that way. Of interest to me, and also very troubling concern, is the rise of the NGOs, the non-government organizations. And I can see, where at some point or another, perhaps in busier sectors, maybe there was a time when, there might be a surge of some kind. And so to deal with the women and children aspect of this humanitarian aspect, they're normally here, what I would see is we would go out and buy, burritos and diapers, and maybe get some donations from a local, pregnancy care center or something. just temporary stuff. But now the NGOs, through our government, through our taxpayer dollars, have become, some people would say, a transportation service for the illegal aliens, for this wave of humanity that's coming across. What are your thoughts, your experience with the NGOs?
Yeah, it really runs the whole gamut. What you just said really is what I would define as the truth as of late, anyways. The NGOs, that's your tax dollars, by the way. It used to just be some nonprofits that got
Yes.
together, and people really truly cared about what was going on, and they were trying to help out. Maybe in some of our opinions, their actions were a little misguided. Say some of the water jugs out in the desert, those types of things, where we know that it actually puts people at more risk, but trying to convince people of that. But that's just really changed. So it's changed over time, but this administration, it was just tidal wave change. That these NGOs are getting FEMA grants. They're getting millions and millions of dollars from the federal government to basically do care feeding and then to help transport these people to their final destination. That message went out worldwide.
Yeah.
So whether it's an official government agency or a sanctioned one, and that's what we're having now, is it's non-governmental organizations, but their actions are clearly sanctioned by the federal government, and they're being paid for it.
Yes.
I don't think that's right. It's creating a huge draw, and that's why I always tell people the biggest difference between this administration and any other administration is there's absolutely no effort at all to slow down the flow or to create any kind of deterrence to illegal immigration under this administration. And that goes right into the NGOs, and there's some questionable stuff going on with some of those, in my personal opinion as well. But yeah, that's your tax dollars right now.
And so, Chief, you speak about and I totally agree. I know in past times, there were true nonprofits, churches, etc., that would help out, that would offer their services. I mean, even the chaplaincy program was a recipient, in a sense, of that, because early on, what would happen? Say there was a line of duty death and not just chaplaincy, but the border patrol. Say there was a line of duty death. There were times when community pastors, clergy, priests would get involved and really come alongside the border patrol and help out, dealing with the aftermath of a line of duty death. But now, what we see here is an entire, I don't even want to call it a cottage industry. It's a mansion industry that has arisen. I mean, with these, we see, multi-million-dollar contracts being handed out, some of it no bid. And when you talk about the questionable actions, thank God there are some congressmen and women that have started questioning for that. Comes to mind, Lance Gooden out of the Dallas area has talked about that. There were a couple of Jim Jordan and a couple other folks with oversight responsibilities in Congress that called for the Inspector General to look at of the respective agencies, Health and Human Services, Department of Homeland Security, to look at the way that some of these contracts were issued out, no bid contracts, but it just opens the door, to fraud, waste, and abuse. When you're throwing millions of dollars, and then now we're throwing gas on the fire, with a total green light. You said it's a draw. America is already a beacon, the city on a hill. It's already the land of freedom, the land of opportunity. People want to come here. That's why we have a legalized naturalization, immigration process. But now, Biden signaled and said, you come, we're going to welcome you. Right here in our own district, the 23rd Congressional District, we got some heartburn with our Congressman Tony Gonzalez, who just recently was on Fox News, and he was asked, what would you do right now about the Russia-Ukraine thing, to protect America? And his first response was, well, last year we had Russians illegally enter the country. They're obviously trying to flee President Putin, and so we need to make it easier, in essence, for them to come to America. And I was like, what in the world? Look, I don't have a problem with legal immigration, Chief, but but we cannot just throw money at a problem. We need to take a seat back. We need to take a seat back, a step back, and assess what we are doing on the border, because we cannot sustain this for another 3 years under this present administration. And it's overwhelming every aspect, not just Border Patrol, our societal structure. It's going to face some strain. And as we're just talking about these things, you did mention some questionable actions. I don't know if you feel comfortable. I mean, I would like, if possible, for you to elaborate what specifically, because you deal with these issues.
I don't mean to interrupt, but our system is messing up again, Chief, and we're probably about to go down here
We're about to go down.
in a minute. I'm sorry. I apologize. Yeah. I have no idea what's happening with our system. This hasn't happened before,
yeah,
Chief.
It doesn't happen.
And so I don't know. Maybe it's just
this morning. But anyways, well, let's just flesh that out, Chief. Well, what are some questionable actions that any one point would be good?
Yeah, so I'll go back to the caravans in San Diego. We saw a transition from NGOs just helping people to NGOs basically teaching people how to commit fraud.
Oh.
And it went the whole gamut. It was religious organizations thought they were doing the right thing, but it got to the point they had a printout of a hand, like when you were a kid, you would draw your hand on a piece of paper. And then each finger represented what they were supposed to tell the CBP officer or Border Patrol agent when they surrendered, so that they could beat the first phase of the asylum process. So they could basically get allowed into the U.S. To get an asylum hearing later. These were a lot of the things that we focused on in the last administration to close those loopholes. Well, when the migrant protection protocols were shut down, the Remain in Mexico was shut down, and then a bunch of the agreements we were making with other nations to make sure that really we do want those people, the real ones from the Ukraine and Russia, to get safety, but it should be in the first safe country, and then divvy up the work, right? But there were so many people that started, in my opinion, focusing on the money, or they started slowly chipping away at the ethics, right? We don't necessarily have to tell the truth if it gets us what we want, which is released into the U.S. Yeah. I saw more and more of that. I can't believe that doesn't exist now that they've added millions and millions of dollars to some of these contracts that are shipping people all over the country. So new capacity, one of the things I do is I work for Texas Public Policy Foundation. And we're looking at, how can we tighten this stuff up legally or give some advice to legislators? There's no accountability on these NGOs. They basically get the money and have to report very little about what they do as far as like transportation, where these people go. So a lot of states are asking how many illegal aliens are being transported to my state, my city. No one can tell them because the government hasn't required the NGOs to report that information back, even though we're paying them. So I'm really pushing for transparency so America can really see what's going on. And it shouldn't be so political that the light of day, that has a tendency to be an antiseptic for a lot of things.
Chief, as you're saying that, I remember that's personally, that's how I met you the first time ever, was at a Texas Public Policy Foundation event right here in Del Rio, Texas. It was a pleasure and an honor to meet you. And it just, and I know you'd been to Del Rio, et cetera. We just never crossed paths. But anyways, as you're saying that, I'm glad that there are outside entities looking at this problem, analytically, just fact-driven, with a purpose, because this may seem like, far left field to some folks, but there are global world players, entities, groups of people that are also behind what is going on. I mean, I've had some good conversations with some folks that, have a certainly much, broader education experience, et cetera. And so the last Great War, the Nazi terror, the imperial threat from Japan was real. It was purely, at that sense, a fight for survival. Now you could get into the politics of subsequent, global conflicts and world, regional conflicts, but we can't exclude that there have been in the past, shady figures in the background, and one of those that comes up is George Soros and his operations, but there's certainly other groups of people. And so I would think that the Texas Public Policy Foundation is also, in a sense, looking at not specifically perhaps at them, but just what are the contributing factors? Am I kind of on the right trail there a little bit?
Yeah, you are. And then getting back to the basic fundamental of responsibility of a nation is to establish its borders and to secure the people within that community, right? Or in this case, that nation. So that's why I like to go back to the home analogy because this can get so big and so complicated.
Yes.
There's so many different aspects. But when you drill it down to the basics, national security, border security is just like your home. You have a right and an expectation culturally in every world or every country around the world, by the way, that people should come to your front door, announce themselves, and then you get to basically decide who and what comes into your country. That principle solves a lot of these problems. Yeah. So whether it's a George Soros initiative or whether it's an NGO that's misguided or whether it's a terrorist trying to come into our country to destroy, or whether it's narcotics smuggling, if you can force that to come through the front door where we have our partners, our brothers, CBP officers waiting to say hello to them, apply the threat assessments, and then decide who and what comes into the country, it really works. Yeah. But when you just open the borders wide up and act like there's no place where you're supposed to come, it's the equivalent of allowing people to crawl through the windows of your home in the middle of the night and not do anything about it. It's just kind of silly, but that's what the Burke administration is doing.
You know, it's amazing as well, Chief. You know, Frank and I, we've gone throughout the community here. We've even talked to illegal aliens that have come across. And what's sad is a lot of people don't realize that many of these illegal aliens, especially from Haiti and from other countries other than Mexico, have expressed to us that they feel and believe that they've been invited. Matter of fact, many of them believe that they're not even breaking any immigration laws. And so they think that coming through the river, of course, you know, Texas has a river, you know, I know it's different than California, but even so, across the country on the southwest border, many are coming through believing that they've been invited. So in my opinion, a lot of this administration is not only basically ruining the security of our nation, but also affecting the livelihoods of many of these illegal aliens that are coming across, because a lot of these Haitians, they had livelihoods in South America, Central America. Some have been living in these other countries other than Haiti for the last 10 to 20 years. You see these floodgates open. Now they have this huge opportunity, they believe. But now we're hearing a lot of these NGOs are dropping them off in communities, and these illegal aliens have no place to go. They're there in the communities now. You know, and of course, you and I know that in the past, many of these illegal aliens that have come through would end up in communities where they're continually being victimized and basically living as indentured servants for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, it's actually horrible, and I agree with you fully. That an open porous border, the only people that benefit from that are literally the cartels. At the end of the day, the aliens, the migrants, whatever term you want to use today, they get abused, they get victimized. The border communities get victimized because all kinds of other crime and just trespassing and destruction of property takes place. It's ridiculous. But if you were an alien today or a migrant that went through our current process, how would you not feel invited? You know, you basically, even if you tried to get away, you got caught by a Border Patrol agent, you get fingerprinted, photographed, you get released very quickly to an NGO that gives you a warm cup of coffee, a nice place to sleep, and a free bus ticket to anywhere in the country you want to go. It just doesn't make sense. But from their perspective, you know, or actually anyone's perspective, what speaks louder, actions or words? So we have a secretary and an administration that stands up and says the border's closed, the border's secure, and then basically invites everybody to come across by creating actions that resulted in an open border.
Right.
The actions speak a lot louder than the words.
And I completely agree. I completely agree, Chief. You know, and it's a sad state of affairs that we're living in. You know, we had, you know, there's also the words going around that, you know, we've always had, you know, we've always experienced this, not at this capacity, not in these numbers. You know, where groups of, you know, I remember when I first came in, when we caught over 100 in a shift, that was incredible. Now it's commonplace.
Yeah. Let me butt in right there. So for everybody out there that's listening, if you get sucked into that conversation, here's the difference from my experience, and I think you guys would be in the same boat. But I actually was there for the transition from the last administration to this administration. As you know, I was in leadership positions in 5 different administrations. Um, we've never seen zero effort to secure the border. That's the difference.
Right.
The numbers have fluctuated. We've had problems, but every single time we had a significant influx or a surge, the administration at that time stepped in and tried to do something, different things. Some worked and some didn't, to solve it. Going back to, we started building border wall in the 90s, actually late 80s, but formally, officially in the 90s. We were working on immigration reform. We were trying to secure it. This administration is doing nothing except tearing down all those programs, stopping the border wall construction,
Right.
and basically their actions have created an open border. That's the difference.
And the sad thing is with this administration, they got rid of these policies that President Trump had in place, and that even previous administrations had in place, not because they were bad policy. It's kind of confusing on why they're getting rid of all these policies. Of course, we have all of our opinions, but the reality is, you're exactly right, Chief. They are doing nothing. I mean, I remember as soon as the Biden administration came in, they were still paying contractors for not building the wall.
You still are today, by the way. You still are.
Wow. So
this administration, if they've done anything good, they've normalized chaos. So they've just smiled and ignored all these issues that keep getting brought up until people are tired of hearing about them. But that's a good example right there. Congress passed laws and appropriated money to build border wall. No administration has the authority to stop it. It's a law like any other law. So they're literally just doing the absolute bare minimum they can to not violate federal law. So they're slow rolling some environmental assessments and stuff like that. But we're still paying all those contractors. All that money is still appropriated. Those are still signed contracts. The ones under DHS, some of the DoD things were closed down.
Right, but that's millions of dollars a day, right? That they're still getting paid.
The assessment at one point it was $5 million a day, but once they shut down the DoD, I know it's dropped off. But that's still your tax dollars being wasted. The Americans already paid to have hundreds of miles of border wall system. And by the way, it's not just a wall. That was some of the state-of-the-art technology. And it was a new, I call it the spinal cord for the Border Patrol. It's going to allow the Border Patrol to push and pull data in a way that we have never done before. It was going to basically close up a bunch of the radio dead spots to dramatically improve agent safety. All that got shut off too. So these people that talk about technology, they want a virtual border. That's silly anyway, but they shut off the technology when they shut off the physical wall, because you can't do one without the other, the way the appropriations was written.
Wow.
Chief, I can't help but this is not as this administration is doing or not doing what it's doing. But anyways, it's way beyond ineptitude, incompetence. It's very, very planned. It is systematic, I think. You're right. Chaos is what they've created on the border and normalized it. But it also, I can't help but say that it's part of a bigger plan. And so Americans need to be aware. Americans need to wake up. They need to get involved. I mean, you're involved like with the Texas Public Policy Foundation. And that's a blessing for them to have your level of expertise. We also, met with former Chief Mark Morgan as well. And so to have that level of expertise and experience, that's tremendous for them. It's tremendous for the American people to be able to hear from you all because of the executive level insight you bring to the table. So what are your plans, Chief? You're involved with them. What else are you doing? I mean, are you going to stay in that part of the arena? Have you thought about any political activity of any kind? Or what are your plans?
So I hate to predict too far into the future, but right now my plan is to keep trying to get the message out. And Texas Public Policy really gives me a platform to be able to do that. They give me a lot of access to a lot of different people running for office. I'm trying to educate them on really the border, how it really operates, as opposed to the talking points you would get out of a paper or out of a 20-minute news clip or something like that. Anyway, I think I'm going to stick with that for now. I'm not saying I'll roll anything out in the future, but really, I think I make a more meaningful impact by doing stuff like this and trying to help people have informed conversations. But I do want to remind people that elections have consequences. So literally, there's primaries going on or just ended, I guess, right now. But there's going to be another elections coming up in 2022. The reason that hopefully people notice, but I have tried to stay out of the politics to a certain extent. And when I retired, it, obviously most of you guys know it wasn't necessarily my idea, but when I retired, I stayed out of the partisan politics to the maximum extent I could. I wrote a letter to Congress, the oversight committees for DHS, and highlighted what I believed was inappropriate decisions, things putting our nation at risk. And I sent that to both sides of the aisle completely. Everybody I could. I would talk to anybody that was willing to talk to me. But unfortunately, I found out very quickly that right now, unfortunately, it is kind of a partisan issue, that most people are burying the truth about the border and the threats. The fact that every town, city, and state in America should be seen as a border community because nothing stays at the border. So I'm finding out a lot of people away from the border, they just don't know. So I'm trying to leverage the title I had, if you will, to get access like this and continue to speak out. I haven't signed on with any news networks or anything like that. People ask me about that all the time too. Because I don't want to be restricted to just being, talking on Fox or a conservative network. I'm doing the best I can to get on some of the networks that don't like this message, because I think their viewers need to hear it. Unfortunately, they don't want people like they don't seem to want the truth right now. But I'm going to keep trying.
We appreciate that, Chief, because one of the missions here for our program at Tacobout Alive is to continually keep this border crisis in front of people, because we don't want it normalized. We don't want this illegal immigration, this influx of this invasion normalized, to become a way of life for people, because sometimes that's, as people quit talking about it, it just becomes, it's a way of life, and this is how things are now.
And I think that's a real threat. We're over a year into this. The numbers crossing the border are just they're just phenomenal, right? But I think January is when I really shook my head. 146,000 people encountered by just Border Patrol, over 150 something CBP-wide. And how was that reported in the mainstream? Oh, the numbers went down.
Yeah.
Like it was a success. That is not a success in any way, shape, or form. They didn't talk about the gotaways. DHS has completely shut down the messaging internally. None of the chiefs are allowed to talk anymore without it being approved talking points. Anyway, so I'm going to continue to try to keep it out there, and I thank you guys for keeping the message out there as well. It is a real threat to this country.
Yeah, Chief. All these other issues, though they're important, whatever's going on in our society, with the socialist agenda, our children, the COVID tyranny, I'll call it, the mandates, et cetera, et cetera. It's secondary in a sense, because if we don't have a nation, eventually it's a moot point. And I've thought about this, how do civilizations rise and fall, and how do powerful nations eventually crumble? And I believe it's a variation of what we're seeing today. Uncontrolled immigration, lax society, lack of enforcing laws or whatever the social norms may be of that time. That's how you cause civilizations to crumble. So I've used a term that the border crisis, the border invasion, is truly an existential threat to America, and we need to view it through that lens, because that's how important, that's how pressing it is. And so we appreciate you being a part of the Texas Public Policy Foundation, which some folks might not know. They have an office or a segment in Texas, but they have a component in Washington D.C. And I imagine that's probably where you spend some time up there. You still going to D.C.?
Yeah, I do both, depending on where the audience is. I was in Austin a few weeks ago doing candidate classes, teaching some of the people running for office about border security.
Nice.
And then TPPF does coordinate with some of the congressionals at a national level to make sure that they're up to speed as well. And then they've really opened a lot of direct lines of communication. So through them, I have a lot of congressionals and senators that'll just reach out to me directly. It's been very beneficial.
I think what's been amazing to me, I think you probably were surprised. You go in here coming to Texas, a state that should be really familiar with illegal immigration, and find out that a lot of people aren't familiar with what's happening on the border. Even here in Del Rio, we live right on the border, and we talk to people on a regular basis that have no clue what's happening right in our own community. And of course we see a lot of things happening in our community under the cover of night. Illegal aliens being flown out from Laughlin Air Force Base, which our local congressman here has petitioned the Biden administration to be utilized for illegal immigration, to further illegal immigration. NGOs transporting people left and right. When Frank and I, when we go look at the NGOs, we see their operations on how we used to, stake out smugglers, and the way they would operate, and the way they would pick up people and transport them. But it's amazing to me that even at the highest levels of local government, state government, there's a lot of ignorance in regards to illegal immigration and what is happening on our borders. Do you find that over there as well in your part of the country?
Yeah, I think it's everywhere. It always surprised me, even in San Diego, the minute you were outside of San Ysidro, which for those of you that don't know, that's the community right on the border. No one seems to know. To be honest, it was the same thing in Arizona. Unless you were right on the border, it didn't seem like that the message got out there. And I honestly believe that's the intent of some of these NGOs and the current administration's support of them. When you can basically filter out the traffic that's coming across and then basically spread it across the country, it gets less attention. Or that's the hope, right? You fly them at night, you ship them out of the local community so they don't see people waiting at bus stops to being released. Yeah. The less questions that are asked, the happier this administration is. So I think it's up to all of us to make sure we keep the information out there and make sure people keep asking questions. The other message though, how much harder is it in Kansas, right? So we're talking about border communities that don't even know. So I remind people all the time, none of these threats stay at the border. The border's a transit area. So literally trying to make people understand that every town, city, and state should be looked at as a border community. If you had a fentanyl death in your community, that crossed the border. That is a border threat. People need to start looking at it that way, but we're not getting a lot of help with that message.
Right, and we haven't even touched on any of the subjects of stuff going south from in our area as well. Chief, we're about to close up our program. I want to thank you so much for being a part of our program today. Sorry about all the technical difficulties. It's never really happened before, but I'm going to compress this program later. It's going to be on podcast so that people can download and listen to the whole program on Spotify, Amazon Music, and Podbean. They can also go to our website and download it as well. And of course, we'll try to do that here as soon as we can, because we were getting a lot of comments when we went down, and so people want to hear this. But Chief, we would love to have you back on, again, so we can continue to discuss this and the border crisis and continue to keep it, at the forefront of our nation, because this is really affecting American sovereignty. Right?
Yeah.
Oh.
I couldn't agree more. I thank you guys for the opportunity to be on. I am more than willing to come back, mostly just to thank you guys too for your service before and your continued service now. I really appreciate it. And Border Patrol is a family. You got to take care of each other.
Amen.
Thank you, Chief. Let me ask you: do you have a personal site set up or anything, or a personal website that you'd like to announce or anything like that?
I set up an LLC. It's called Honor Consulting LLC. There is an actual .org. There's a website, but it's not overly functional yet. I haven't had a lot of time to spend on it. I've spent more of my time trying to just educate the legislators. I am going to be doing a little bit of mentoring though. Nice. I just picked up a couple of mentees for no cost for the next few months, because I do think it's important to give back. I will build that website out with some leadership stuff in the future. It's not really a sales pitch. It's more of information and trying to give back to the agency still, because it gave me so much. But otherwise, Texas Public Policy Foundation is what I do most of my work through, and I can always be contacted through them as well.
That's awesome, Chief. As you say that, definitely let's stay in contact, because if you're back in Texas and particularly the border, your schedule allows, I'd love to have you come speak to us. I have a a series I started when I was the Valverde County Republican chairman here. It was called the Champion Speakers Series, and it was an acronym. You know, us in government, we love acronyms. So Champion was conservative heroes, advocates, mentors, and patriots impacting our nation.
Man, you remember that whole.
I remember, bro. I love those acronyms. But as you were saying, that the mentoring aspect specifically, you know, in our communities, our border communities, we see so many young men and women just throwing away their future, destroying their lives. And part of that is the societal impact, the dynamic of positive role models in the lives of these young men and women. So many single parent homes, and I mean, there's so many dynamics involved with that. But I would love, if possible, you know, when you come down, if your schedule would allow, to get together a group of young men and women who need uplifting, encouraging guidance from a person of your stature, Chief. And you can discuss it offline, but I just wanted to plant that little seed in your mind, because I think that is an admirable thing. Our society does need mentors. You know, Border Patrol itself was an apprenticeship-based, you know, profession where the journeyman would teach the younger agents, you know, the intricate little details of being an agent, stuff you didn't get at the academy. You had to go out and actually learn it on the ground. And so that dynamic is very important. I'm actually excited to hear that you're doing that. But anyways, we can talk about that offline.
Definitely look forward to it. I'll chat with you about it.
Yes, sir.
Figure something out.
All right. Well, Chief, again, we want to thank you so much for joining us on Tacobout Live, and appreciate you being here and sharing your knowledge and insight in regards to our nation's security and the border, and the overall climate of the Border Patrol as well. Folks, again, you can get this entirety, this broadcast in its entirety and on podcast here later on as well. We'll make sure you get the link on our page. But Chief, we want to say thank you so much. The Lord bless you and keep you, and may He continue to prosper you in your endeavors and what you're doing. And you'll be in our prayers every day. And so we truly appreciate you being here with us today.
God bless you, Chief.
God bless you guys. Enjoy those tacos. I'm going to go get mine now.
All right.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you so much. All right, everybody. Well, so sorry for the technical difficulties. We truly appreciate you joining us on Facebook. And we weren't able to get on Rumble this morning due to technical difficulties. I have no idea what's going on with the internet and all our connections and everything like that. But, man, it was an awesome discussion, right?
Yeah. And the difficulties, it was either big tech or the devil, brother.
Either way, bro. Either way, I think I know we're on somebody's list somewhere, now, and so. But folks, we got to continue to get the word out. We got to continue to educate people on what's happening on our border. Let's not let it get normalized. Please like and share, this. I kind of hate using those terms, because I don't want to be caught up in all the all this other stuff. But the reality is you need to share this type of information, folks, with everybody, because this is an invasion. It's not just a crisis, folks. It's an invasion of what's happening in our country.
God bless you all.
So we'll say, God bless you, God bless America, and let me set the outro up. So because that's the way we go out, Frank, is with that outro. So anyway, God bless you, God bless America, and God bless Texas.